Dun, 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 dun. What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, well, mostly ages of probably about 13 and up. Welcome to the Unfiltered Experience, where we are here to expand your horizons and your confidence and your ability to love and care for yourself here on the Unfiltered Experience. I'm Christopher Rausch, your No Excuses coach. And of course, I am joined by the awesome
Scott Goyette. Thanks, Chris. That was nice of you to call me awesome. I appreciate that.
You are awesome.
Really nice. You're
You're
awesome
my brother
too,
from another mother, man.
I'm
You're
liking
fucking
it.
taller than a fucking house, but I've always used to be the tallest person, like usually around. And also when you and I got together, it was like, hi, Scott.
Who is that guy? I just keep eating, man. I eat well. That's why.
Yeah. You're 6'4", right?
Yeah. It's not even that like once you play basketball, though, you realize it's not that tall. It depends where you are. You know, like I go to like a family event. I'm always the big freak. Then I go to the court and it's like you're just another dude. So.
Yeah, you get up to a guy who's 6'7" and you're like, fuck, I feel like I'm 5'2".
That's when I know people are taller because there's a weird kink in my neck that I don't realize I'm always looking down. And so I think everyone's the same height. If you said, how tall was that person? I'm like, my height. And they're like, dude, they were 5'3", because anything like this is normal. The minute I go like this, I'm like, oh, they're 6'5", they're 6'6", they're 6'7". Then eventually I'm like, oh, they're 7 feet. That hurts.
Do you run up against people who are 7 feet tall?
The tallest guy I ever covered was the University of District Columbia, and he was 7 feet tall. So.
Can you imagine being fucking 7 feet tall for your entire life? Like going through door. I mean, every fucking thing is being a pain in the ass. Getting in the car, everything.
Dude, even first class on an airplane barely fits me. So you get a flatbed seat overseas that you pay a ludicrous amount of money to get on. They're made for the most 6'6", and they're usually made to fit just barely 6'4". So when I'm laying flat on that, my head's like against the top and my feet I'm barely in it. I have to like squish up, but I'm not complaining. But imagine if you're 7 feet, it's like, I just paid 10 grand for a freaking ticket and I still don't fit. Like, what am I supposed to do, sleep in the aisle? Like, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess you just buy your own plane. You make sure you're damn good at basketball and you can buy your own plane and make a 7-foot seat, right?
There you go. That's what it's all about. We got Robert Broker in the house. He says, hey, Christopher and Scott, what's up, Robert? Hope you had a beautiful week. Can't believe it's already Friday already. Like we were just literally having the conversation last Friday about me. Like you interviewed me and I swear to God, this week, I don't know for you, it's just like, they're just bolting by. It's like, that's October already.
It's insane.
Like, what the hell, man? I went to Italy in June. It's like, it's insane how fast time is going by.
It really is. It's like, there's so many, I've got a group of students from Denmark and that I'm teaching about international business and sustainability here in the US and how we, do make sure companies more sustainable. We've got a new class I'm teaching. We've got coaching groups. There's so much interaction that the second I talk to one group, it's like, boom, at the end of the week, boom, the end of the week. And it just keeps going and going. It's amazing. So,
yeah. And you got some cool stuff coming up, don't you? You got a trip down to Florida happening?
There's supposed to be a trip to Florida happening. I don't know what's going on with that. I'm supposed to be speaking to some group, a group of nurses. I just found out I'm probably going to be working with the VA, the Veterans Administration, teaching stress management. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. I'm just smiling, teaching, helping, supporting, and somehow getting my bills paid. So I love it.
Love it. And tonight we've got a special duo. We got a duo tonight. Why don't you do the honors in introducing them?
Absolutely. So these beautiful humans, some of you who know Susan Marie, who's been on the show, she was kind enough to introduce me to this young lady and her husband. And I'm going to be on their show as well, too, which we did a recording. It's going to be coming out soon. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the amazing humans, David and Gissele Taraba.
What's up, David and Gissele?
Hi.
Welcome to the Unfiltered Experience.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
How are you beautiful souls doing tonight?
Wonderful.
We're doing good. Yeah, really good. Thank you for having us.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure and an honor. I mean, any friends of Scott's, by all means. I mean, and we've had Susan Marie on the show a couple of times, and she's been a fan favorite, for us, for having the deep metaphysical talks about how we can connect better to source and our higher vibrations, our higher frequencies. So we appreciate you being on here, and I'll let Scott ask the first question.
Yeah, it's amazing, David. I had a great chance to meet Gissele in our discussions and the talk that we had. And I was listening to so many similarities about you guys and my wife and I, Kim, and how we're on this journey together and we're able to be mirrors to one another and help one another elevate and build. Just tell us a little bit about, the center that you guys have created, how you guys are commingling in it. There's so many people, I'm sure, that say, listen, I don't want to work in any way with my spouse. And then,
Yeah.
you guys and my wife and I are doing it, and somehow we haven't killed each other. So maybe just talk about that.
Okay, so I guess it's our individual journeys kind of brought us together and led to the commingling, as you put it, in the creation of the Maitri Centre. So I desired to do something and share, give back to what I felt I could do, and just trying to shine for people in my own way quite a few years ago. And Gissele at that moment wasn't really ready for things. So I put it off, and now you fast forward a few more years and it just seems to, our energies aligned, I guess you could say, and things came together. And so we set up a virtual center that we do workshops and mainly workshops now because of COVID and the whole bit.
And we do coaching.
Well, you do coaching.
Yeah.
And it's basically, it's all about love and compassion. So it's learning to, we try to share our understanding of what love is and what compassion is, and how people can bring more of that into their own lives, and then reflect back from their outpicturing a different experience that is
Cool.
more aligned.
So what is your understanding of love? Because everybody,
that was my question. Yep.
Yeah. Everyone's got a different, you ask 1,000 people, what does love mean to you?
Yeah.
You're going to get 1,000. It's a very, very opaque word. It's not a very transparent word. So what does love and compassion mean to both of you?
I'll go. That's a big question.
You started it.
I know, I started.
Okay, so
there is no one definition of love for me. For me, it's more of a, to keep it simple, it's like a frequency, we'll say, right? So it's a bandwidth, because we all kind of live within different bandwidths, we'll say, of energy. I don't know. I don't want to get off the rails too quickly.
No. Go as far off the rails as you want. We like it.
Yeah. So love is just a method of expressing. It's something that ties us all together. And truly love, like, we focus in on unconditional love because that's where we kind of feel love truly begins. So unconditional love is very, very challenging at times, and it's not mushy, it's not granola eating, it can be very challenging, right? It can be very pushing on you, very uncomfortable, and lead to lonely, dark nights. But that is as much love as the love that I share for my wife. Yeah. If that makes any sense in a nutshell. Now you can answer.
Of course. And one of the things that, we each of us have discovered in our journey is that you can't really have that unconditional love for other people unless you have it for yourself.
Yes.
It is truly when I love and accept myself unconditionally, fully, for all the things that I think that make me flawed as in this human 3D body. Mm-hmm. And it's acknowledging that. And from that space, I can then open myself up to unconditionally love other people. At the time when I was conditionally loving myself and needing, external sources of love and validation, I needed people to be different. I needed my husband to be different. I needed things from him. But when I started to fully love and embrace myself, only then did I realize he didn't need to be different. I could just unconditionally love him. But the interesting thing that happened was that when I changed, our relationship changed. It became more harmonious. Everything that I'd been desiring and wishing for happened harmoniously and naturally with ease and grace. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's one of the main things that we have learned.
And you nailed it. Sorry to take all the mic time, but she nailed it. Self-love. So like everything is self-love. Like, I don't want to say that it's a very blanket statement, but it is. It all comes from within, and then it gets out pictured into the physical world that we all kind of play in, and then you get back, right, a reflection based on what you are putting out there from yourself, by yourself. The whole victim that has to kind of fall away to the side in order to truly get into where we describe love, right? And then compassion. Compassion is an aspect of love. I define it as it's an expression or an act of love, so to speak.
And I think one of the things that also helped us understand like how to truly tap into that unconditional love. What was I going to say? I'm sorry, I just kind of lost it. What it was really going to tap into that unconditional love. Is the understanding that, you know, this is really just the human experience, and there's a higher version of ourselves. There's the soul spirit, and that cannot be broken. So when I saw myself as a victim was when I really saw myself as this human being that could be negatively impacted by other people. Yeah. I didn't realize, and it was thanks to my husband that helped me realize that I was constantly giving my power to other people. Yeah. And so I was picturing myself as a victim, and therefore, because of that, created that duality that other people needed to play the perpetrator role. And when I accepted full responsibility for my energy and for what I was giving away, I really could come at relationships from a place of mutual understanding and love, and in mutual seeing the divinity in other people as well as in myself.
Amen. I love that. And I want to talk about, because I love this kind of stuff. I want to talk about, so the process and the journey you kind of alluded to before when you were seeking that external validation. Talk to us about your childhood experiences and what type of environments you grew up in. And what was that pivotal moment where you started seeing things from a different perspective?
Yeah. Do you want to do first or I'll do first? Okay. I can start. So I grew up with two individuals who had experienced various levels of child abuse and neglect. And so actually, parents, I kind of had a dream to my parents. Okay. And so my sister and I really kind of had a lot of experiences where we were taught the survival skills of trauma people. So even though we had the same skills, don't trust anyone. I certainly didn't trust people, very guarded, very armed, believed life was negative. It was always out to get you, and you're always waiting for the shoe to drop. And so I walked around in life with kind of my guard on, you know, not allowing myself to get hurt, but also not allowing love in either. And so I decided that I wanted to go into the child welfare system and try to help rescue people. So that what I was basically doing was trying to rescue myself and my mother. Yep. But that came later on with the learning. And then eventually I hit a wall. I hit a wall of suffering. And I said to myself, I remember saying to myself, I would rather leave this incarnation than continue going into this path. And I think that's when I opened up myself to the understanding that I was harming myself with my negative thinking. And I didn't realize that I was harming myself with my negative thinking. Really, actually, you know, I've had pain in my life, but I kept re-traumatizing myself with my thinking. So every time I remembered the pain, every time I didn't want to address the emotions, I kept re-traumatizing myself. And so when I realized that I was hurting myself, I also realized I had the power to heal myself. Yes. And so also in my relationship with David, I obviously, I feel, have chosen him on purpose in that he's helped me on my journey understand those pieces, understand when I was not open and willing to love, because I wasn't willing to love myself. And so that I, you know, enabled myself to really see those aspects of myself that I didn't really like and fully embrace them.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Okay. My story is my story. So I feel in this lifetime, because I'm a firm believer in reincarnation and all that, the wheel of life kind of thing. So in this particular lifetime, it's funny you mentioned this question, because we just were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, and I'm having memories come back about my early years that I kind of repressed and just let go. Yeah. They're not negative memories, but they're memories of how awoke I was back then as a child in certain ways. And like the conversations I had with my parents and recognizing, like when they used to argue, a ton. So, but recognizing things about their relationship and myself and then you just repress that to try and be normal, right? And fit into what quote unquote society, so to speak, right? So I had a pretty good upbringing, pretty good childhood. I spent a lot of time by myself, like everybody else does. I wasn't I don't know. I don't want to reflect on anything like it was a bad thing or a good thing. It was the experience that brought me here today. So it was perfect. Like when I reflect back on it, I can go into a lot of different identities, right? About how I felt shitty here and I was wrong done here and I did the bad thing to this person here. But I choose not to energize that anymore than, because I lived it, it's done, it's part of who I am.
Yep.
And the identities that I have now I'm creating new, I'm letting go of old, and it's all kind of beautiful for that.
And if I may add, like that was one of the things that I really had to realize, that through my thoughts and beliefs, I created these habits which form these identities.
Amen.
And I really absorbed these identities. And so this unlearning journey, unlearning all of the things, because we truly believe that at our core, we are loving, compassionate.
100%.
That's who we are at our core, but we've learned all of these things that prevent us from really feeling that love for ourselves and for other people.
Yeah.
And so as I was unlearning, I had to let go of a lot of identities. And so, but there's such a fear in letting go of that, because if I'm not this victim, who am I? If I'm not this mother, who am I? If I'm not this wife, who am I? Who is this? Who is this being? Who really is this being?
Right.
And in getting to know this being, I'm not using a her or a him. It is a beautiful journey, an ongoing journey. And so it really is about allowing and letting go. I just have to share this story before somebody asks me a question. But I love the conversations that my husband and I have been kind of, amazing for me, because one of the things we talk about is the definition of compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And he would say to me, compassion is allowing all things to be. And I was like, really? What about child abuse? What about crime and whatever? And he would say, it's the resistance that allows these to stay and manifest. It's the resistance that we're not. It's about allowance and then choosing what we want to create. But I really fought that for so long. It was like, no, I have to be this hero that rescues the children or helps the environment or whatever. And so letting go of that identity and needing to fix and seeing the true perfection that already exists in people has been a good journey for me.
Nice.
And it's not about turning a blind eye to any of that stuff.
Of course.
True.
But I fully hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I heard a new definition of a word recently. I guess it's probably always been the definition. I just didn't get the full definition. But I was listening to someone explain twin flames, and it sounded different than what I comprehended it to be. So I went and looked it up in more depth. And my assumption was it's that person you meet, you're supposed to be with. Everything's going to be super amazing. It's all fluid, and the world changes because the two of you came together. And the depth of what I found out that it really said it is, and David, you were just talking about, you were saying, looking at the shadows, defining love, you see all of it. You said, once I changed, the relationship changed, and you start taking accountability. What the twin flame really supposedly is, it's two people who are always going to up-level each other. So there's going to be no stagnancy. So the two people come together by some divine intervention, like we chose, but we chose to be challenged. And I want, you guys to answer this and Chris to answer this. Do you guys think that maybe your twin flames, aka mirrors to one another? So you're going to have beautiful times together. There's going to be romance. There's going to be wonderful times. But when you look at the mirror and suddenly you're holding up the mirror, you're going, are you where you want to be? And that's where that friction comes from. It's not bad friction. It's up leveling. It's saying, I saw some stagnancy. You told me you want to be bigger and better. You want to be everything you can be in the perfection of your spirit. Where are you? And so do you guys think that you might be that for each other? And I'd love to hear Chris's feedback about, him and Barbara's too.
I'm curious what you would say.
Do you want to go first, Chris?
This is like the Newlywed Game. So we're going to put we have Gisele's answer this question backstage. We're going to see it here. We have to have Gisele.
And here's my sign.
I'm going to pull the sign up and validate what you said.
I think you hit it on the head, really. The twin flame okay, so as humans, we want to humanize everything. So we've taken religion and we've humanized it. We've taken science, and that's a human understanding of our experience. And so it's all wonderful. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think you were speaking to something that was beyond the human experience, which is, to keep it simple, you or your reflection is your twin flame. Because all you have is you. Like, you have your energy, Scott. You have your energy, Christopher. I have mine, and Gisele has Gisele's. We don't ever, from my understanding, share or give each other identities. energy. You purely are responsible for yourself 100%, and me and all the rest of us. What we do is we mix and mingle. And then we have, in the physical world, we have these wonderful ability to have agreements where I can see Christopher and punch him in the face and he'll hurt because no, but you know what I'm saying? And we can have that, but really you are creating that experience for yourself. I'm creating the experience of the perpetrator for myself, but we have that beautiful ability to mix and mingle, which creates this wonderful experience of being with others in the physical world. But to your point, the twin flame is that aspect of you that isn't here, but it kind of will be here at some point. It's the part that we are in resistance to and we're not expressing through ourselves. So when we talk about unconditional love, it's about expressing for yourself. And then, you may think, oh, I'm feeling a lot of love from those people, but no, you're reflecting a potential. So those people are now elevated if they choose to, and then they can shine and you kind of bathe in that wonderful stuff. So that would be my 2 cents.
I love
Not that that's a definite, that's just my opinion on the thing.
Yeah.
I'm interested to hear what Christopher has to say.
Yeah. You can go at Christopher, and then I can go at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. I think there's so many different things that come into my mind, because I know that we attract that's what we seek out, and I think a lot of this stuff is predefined in our previous incarnation, of to say, okay, listen, I need to attract these type of people into my life to learn these types of lessons and to expand my particular growth. And I've seen more times than not, we often attract in our partner some semblance of who our mother or our father was. So even talking to Barb, she's like, we were talking about one day, and I said, so how am I like your dad? And she's like, what do you mean by like that? And I said, what aspects of me are like your dad? And she didn't ever recognize it, but she started, well, you're like this. And she's like, she goes, wow, you're a lot like my dad. And I said, so what is it about me that that you're with me for? And she goes, and I got her to walk through this, because I knew what her answer was going to be. She goes, I'd like to have a different experience with my dad through you. Like seeing that different type of energy. And I said, that's funny you mentioned that, because I see a lot of my mom in you. You're a very strong, independent woman, And I'm also finding that I'm trying to seek, validation and significance from you, because I've done that with all my different types of relationships. And so I think, to answer your question, Scott, I think it's important to be aware and cognizant of that, and not to fight that, but also to embrace it, and to look to see how you can mutually grow together from that experience and from that awareness. And so I think that's important, and to not try to fix what it is that you were able to fix in your previous relationships or with your parents or anything like that. It's about experiencing that and saying, okay, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? And so that's what Barb and I really focus on, is like, we're in a situation, and I'll sit there and I'll think to myself, I'm like, wow, you're really reminding me of my mom. You're reminding me of, my mom. It was weird how I said that in my brain. And so I sit there and I go, okay, what is it that I need to heal and nurture from my relationship and from my perception and my expectations from my mother that I'm putting onto you, that mirror, that type of situation on you. And so as long as I don't think it's about her, and I know that it's about the root cause of the situation, she's the symptom, but the root cause, then it allows me to discover more of what types of healing that I need to do. Like you were saying, David, is about, repressing those kinds of things, because I had a very traumatic childhood. Well, I won't go into all the details, but so sometimes we find in others the things in ourselves that we don't necessarily like. So I think for us, it's about that awareness and what we need to do as far as our deeper healing, and then grow together as a result from that, and share those wins and those experiences. What about you, Mr.
Beautifully said. Yeah, beautifully said.
Well, actually, Gissele,
so from my perspective, it's you know what? So where my brain went really was around. I feel like everyone is our soulmate. From that perspective, everybody mirrors to us what we need to heal within ourselves. Yep. And so one of the things that I toy with, really thinking about, is what if our worst enemies are really our bestest friends, because they're really mirroring to us that which we really need to heal. What if we set up, so what if we set up that experience beforehand and say, okay, you're going to play the enemy, I'm going to play the victim, so that we really both decide to choose who we're going to be, like to choose that, more loving and compassionate approach. And, like going back to David's definition of allowing all things to be, one of the things that I really thought about is that there is really no inherent good or bad except what we interpret in it. And if we really believe, like we do, about reincarnation, and that the soul can never be broken, we are always in our power. And it's just the 3D human that feels hurt, that feels shame, that feels guilt, that feels all of these emotions and makes them wrong, so suppresses them.
Yeah.
But when we allow those experiences to pass, when we welcome our shame, we welcome our guilt, and even are kind to our mind, we can allow them to pass and really not get stuck in the story. Like, David's always telling me, are you stuck in the story? And sometimes that's like, oh, because when I'm stuck in the story and he tells me that, I'm like, oh.
That's exactly how I said.
No, no, that was
my wife has a husband voice. That's why I was laughing at that. She's like,
no. When it's like, he goes, are you stuck in the story? And I'm like,
I love that. I love that. It really is. It really is about that perspective. And I think now in today's world that this conversation right now is so timely because so many people are looking at you're wrong and I'm right. You're a part of that group. I'm a part of this group. And this divisiveness that seems to be going on. We're at the same point. It's like, and I was just telling somebody this earlier today, we often don't like in others what we don't like in ourselves. And so we could just sit there and have that awareness and that clarity to say, okay, listen, this person's pissing me off. Why? What is it? What am I making this to mean about myself? And what deeper work do I need to be doing in order so I don't have that projection of that coming back on me from this particular individual? For me personally, when I sit there and I do that work and I'm like, okay, what is it about that person that's upsetting me? Okay, they remind me of myself when I was a dick. They remind me of my mom in those situations. What can I learn from this? What can I gain from this particular situation? It's not always easy, but I think now more than ever, people need to go back to that. What you guys talked about at the beginning was that self-love component. So what kind of advice and suggestions would you guys have for people who are struggling right now? Because I'll share this story with you. During COVID, one of my ways to give back and just pay it forward, just help people out, was giving out these complimentary coaching calls. It was just like a way to just for me just to give my gift and share with somebody, just to kind of give them hope and lift them up and let somebody know that was there to care for them. And I probably did a couple hundred of them. And through the process, probably about, I don't know, maybe 75 in, I started recognizing a pattern. And I said, something just told me, God source whispered, just said, ask them if they love themselves. And so I sat there and I set up this question. I said, listen, I'm going to ask you a question. I don't want you to think about it too hard, but I want you to give me your gut reaction. Do you love yourself? Yes or no? And as I said it the first time, I thought, fuck, this is a stupid question. And I started seeing people were doing it on Zoom, and I started seeing people, well, yeah, I guess so. Or for the most part, or wow, I never really thought. Some people were like, yeah, of course I love myself. And I could tell those people like truly love themselves based on the way they carried themselves in the conversation up until that point. But going through and finding out like 75% of these people did not love themselves or had challenged loving themselves. And I said, can you see how the other results of your life are predicated on the fact of that self-love, that you're doing things to find external validation, external things like that? What can we help people with as far as having that forgiveness and empathy for themselves for maybe transgressions they did that they're not proud of, or situations and experiences they had in their life that they still want to blame their parents for as to why they are the way they are?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a deep question. Yeah. So the first thing I would say is be willing. Yeah. Be willing to, because that's one of the things that I find in the people that I work with is that there's a lot of resistance to loving yourself. Some people have been taught that it's narcissistic, or that, it's very self-indulgent and it's not motivating. I have to motivate myself with criticism in a negative voice. So I often ask, if you were talking to your bestest friend or the person you love the most, what advice would you give them? Would you treat them the same way that you're treating yourself? And often the answer is no. They'll be like, no, I would advise her this, or I would tell her to live your dreams. And I'm like, so what's happening here? Like, why is it that you can't? Well, I can't do it for myself, or it feels too difficult. And so being willing actually helps people relax, like into that not feeling like, oh, I have to love myself now. Like, why am I not loving myself? Because it's a learned response. It's a lot of the times we don't feel like if our parents react in a specific way. So one of the things when I was coaching somebody recently, they were talking about their parents and how they needed them to behave perfectly. They needed them to be perfect in order for them to be lovable, and their love was very conditional. And one of the things that we were talking about was the fact that, when you are not good at regulating yourself as an adult, you need the external, you need the kids to behave in a certain way in order for you to feel peace. So you need them to change your behavior in order for you to feel, to feel calm, to feel confident. And so that's why you see a lot of parents will say, you need to be quiet, you need to simmer down, you need to behave, you need to be, because then I can feel peace. I can't regulate myself enough. So it wasn't the kid's fault. And so, but a lot of kids internalize it and say, oh, I'm not worthy of that attention. I'm not worthy of them allowing to be myself. I'm not worthy of them acknowledging me. But really what it was is that the parent wasn't able to give what they weren't able to give to themselves. Yeah. And so often these parents didn't receive that kind of love and compassion, in that they were not seen and valued. And so they don't have the capacity. It's actually sometimes triggering for them to show physical emotions, to show that kind of love. It can feel very unsafe for them if they didn't receive that. And so helping people understand that it was not about them, that they were not unlovable or unworthy. We're all lovable and we're all worthy. We all have the capacity and should be able to live our dreams to the highest capacity. We all deserve it. It's our birthright. And so helping people understand that, and understand some of their experiences, and going more into the heart and away from the mind.
Yeah, love that. What about you, David? What do you think about that question?
To add to that, beautiful answer. I would say that in the beginning stages, like the energies around of the collective consciousness on Earth have jumped up a level because of COVID and just all the things that came out of COVID, and even what brought COVID to be, so to speak. It kind of, everything increased. So people are, there's a light that is now shining on a lot of the shadows that people kept at bay for a long, long time, right? There was a wonderful status quo of living my life in this way and everything was good. It was bumpy. I got beat on this, I bumped it, but I could do it, right? It was livable. But now we're at a level where we kind of went up an octave, we'll say, or a note, if you even want to go that way. Then there's light being shine on them. Now that is pushing people to explore what your question is, whether they want to or not. And a lot of people, I would say the vast majority of people that are still here on Earth weren't looking for change, put it that way. Let's just say they weren't necessarily seeking for inward growth. But it's kind of like we're all being pushed like lemmings off the cliff to kind of expand our consciousness. So my advice to that, because I think that's the majority of people. I don't want to speak for everybody, but if you've had really no awakenings until that point, and you're kind of feeling very uncomfortable because you feel the life's pushing on you and things are getting harder and all this, well, that's when you have to choose. It's about consciously making an effort, like a choice, a decision to say that, okay, I'm willing to get to know me more. Because that's what this is all about. It's all about your relationship with yourself. So all the things that Gissele discussed, which is right on point, it's all reflections of your relationship with yourself. And that, like the question, do you love yourself? Took me a long time to, like, of course I could tell you, I love myself. But when I stood in front of the mirror, right, years ago, and had that conversation with myself and actually looked in my eye and said that, oh my God, it was horrible. It was freaking horrible.
And you literally did that, right? You literally did that, right?
Absolutely.
I think that's so important to actually do it actually in front of a mirror. Yes, I love that.
Yeah, because by that time I had read many books, I had done classes, I'd done this, and this is not my first kick at the human experience can by any stretch of the imagination. So I was there, but I was very mental. So in this lifetime, I'm mental, like not mental crazy. Well, I guess you could say that, but mental meaning I was very much locked in the left side of my brain, the analytical processor, the rational mind, that this or this and this, and I can solve. So that's the starting point where we all kind of come from. Like we're so caught in that world that we live in, that this time right now is an opportunity to go a little bit beyond that. So you're not going to leave this world, you're not, but just to make a conscious decision if you're willing to, because the first thing is to talk to yourself. So if you can actually say to yourself in your moments of having your quiet time, a little bit of reflection, when you just had a horrible day and you're like, why is this constantly happening to me? Well, then if you can sit down with yourself and have an honest conversation and just say, like, am I willing to get to know myself better? And truly, genuinely mean it, then you've already started your journey. And once you start your journey, it's gonna go. Like, it's gonna snowball. You will, whether you want to or not, you're going to go through the growth and the expansion that you came here to do. And that's a little more.
Yeah. I was just going to mention
Abstract, I guess.
something that you had said really triggered in me that, one of the things that we also talk about is the allowance, is that a lot of the suffering we experience is that we have such a resistance to our pain. We have such resistance to the things that come up. When we have looked in the mirror and thought, oh, I love myself, who am I kidding? Right? It's that resistance that we don't want to see, but in the allowance, in the allowing things to flow, because energy is about flow. Life is about flow. And in that resistance, that's what causes us harm. That's what causes us illness. That's what causes us to be out of balance.
Yeah.
And so it really is allowing the things and welcoming them and not making them wrong, not making ourselves wrong, actually meeting these emotions with kindness and with love and compassion. Yeah. I think that's what kind of helps the journey to healing.
That's the challenge, right? But it is, because we're our worst critics. We absolutely are our worst critics. So before I even could answer the question, do I love myself? It was, do I like myself?
Yeah.
Do I like myself? Like, do I truly like myself? And that's a challenging question. When you truly start to break away and break down the identities that you held like a brick wall around yourselves, and you can see it in people. People walk around and we all have walls. We all have boundaries around us, right? We all do. Like, you meet people and their best, I'm a social creature, but when, to go back on, you were talking about our relationship, how it brought us together. Gissele used to reflect on, like, how can you talk to strangers? How can you just go up to somebody and talk to them?
Yeah,
right.
Because I grew up, I lived in I lived in Toronto, and so the first time that I went, I think we were dating, and it was him and his sister, and they were walking down the street, and they were like, "Hey, Joe, hey, so and so is," and I'm like, "Do you know those people?" Because when I lived in Toronto, it was like it was blinders. You did not look at anyone, and also add to that my backpack of not trusting anyone, and so it was like, "What? Do you know those people?" Because there was a lack of safety. Even our family wasn't safe.
Yeah.
Even people that were close to us weren't safe. When you grew up in that kind of abusive environment, like it took me a long time to figure out that my safety comes from within. When I feel safe, I'm safe, right? Like it came from within.
You got your expectations. Like, as long as this criteria is met, then I will be.
Yeah.
But you don't know until you know. Because I remember we were driving in the car and we were dating, and like, not that I'm perfect, not by any stretch of the imagination, but we're just talking about walls.
He's pretty cool.
And you had a very defined wall around you.
I did.
But you were totally oblivious to it. You had no idea. You were just, hey, status quo. I'm the center. Everything's awesome, which it was for 90% of it. But then you have this brick wall. So I turned to you in the car as we were driving down the highway, and I said, "How long?" And you're like, "What do you mean, how long?" I said, "How long are you going to hide behind that brick wall?" But it wasn't, we were arguing or anything. We're just having a conversation.
We were just having a conversation.
And like right there, you could see, like, oh my God, like, no, I never even went down that road of identifying that I had any walls. So start by taking easy, like, have easy questions, have easy conversations with yourself. Because until you wake up and you want to learn these things for yourself, people, like, you can talk to people. I'm sure you've experienced it. You talk to people until you're blue in the face, or you're saying the same thing over and over again, until somebody takes it in and owns it for themselves. Yeah. Which is what we all do. Because then they'll come to you and say, like, "Guess what I just came up with? Such and such a thing." You're like, "Well, we just talked about that for
years later." Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
that's when they absorb it, when they take ownership,
right? Because they're ready for that. So it has to come from within. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. No,
anyway.
You answered correctly.
Okay. What's my prize?
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I can see Scott's nodding. He's got a question burning.
No, I'm just sitting here relaxing.
Really, I got a bunch of questions, but I don't want to hog up the whole conversation.
No, I always have too many questions. I'm gonna back off. Today is observance, and that's really what we're talking about right now. Don't attach to all these things. Observe. So I'm gonna practice what I speak. I'm gonna sit here in this green shirt doing some observing.
That's good. Yeah. Looks good.
And one of the things that as David was talking, I remembered as well, is that, one of the things that we have to acknowledge for ourselves is that when we get triggered, that's when really at the point where we are at the potential of most growth.
Yes.
Because we are being triggered because there's something to heal within ourselves. And normally what happens is we want to shut it down. Now, I had enough safety with David that I could be, okay, maybe there's something there, right? But sometimes we get triggered because we get mirrored by other people and we don't like what we see. And so going back to David's point, be willing to look at the reflection, not with like harshness or anger or shame or guilt, but just with a desire to really get to know yourself more, with a desire to really get to know.
Yeah, get curious. That's
to get curious. Curious is a great component of compassion.
It's true.
We lose that as kids. We lose that as kids.
Do.
I mean, we're kids. We're curious. Everything. There's like new discoveries and everything else. But then there's a point where it comes like, okay, curiosity, is dangerous and everything else. And I'm just curious with you, Gissele, especially, with the breaking down of the walls and the barriers. How did that impact your relationships with people you knew previously, perhaps your parents and things of that nature, your sibling? How did that start to change those relationships as you started getting more aware of your own self?
Yeah. So thank you for asking that question. I appreciate that. I think it helped me to forgive.
Nice.
It helped me. So once I took responsibility for my own self-love and self-compassion and gave myself what I was looking for externally. So if I didn't feel validated, I would give it to myself. If I didn't feel lovable, I would turn that love inward. When I didn't need any more externally from the people in my life, I could forgive them. I could understand that they could only give to me to the level that they could give themselves. Yeah. So my relationship shifted. Like I don't really need, so when I get together with the people I love, I truly enjoy it. I love them. I don't need them to be different. I shifted away from that, the need for them to change or the need for them to be different or to grow or to expand. You kind of go back to that definition that David had of compassion, allowing all things to be. Understanding that my loved ones, the people in my life, are on their journey and they are part of the divine. And if they don't get it right in this life, they'll get it right in the next life. I don't need to fix anyone. I don't need to fix anything. I only need to see the perfection within myself and other people. And they can either align to that, as David said, or not, right?
Yeah.
That is beautiful. Yeah. Okay, Scott, since you're not gonna ask a question,
I can ask questions.
Go for it.
So
I just had one and it just wait. I had it and then it just went out my head.
So here's something that comes back a lot, and again, I obviously practice the same stuff that we're talking about. I'll go to the space of source. Susan Marie calls it seatedness. I just call it, I'm in source. I'm there, and when I'm coming here, I'm in practice. Because this is a space that we've created time, the human construct of time, we have time. I have limited time to do things. So when I have people who I know are going to be triggering because they're going to do things that don't fit into a smoothness, we talked about a frequency, like frequency of love. Like I want to be in a space where everybody's in that love frequency and people aren't yanking me all over the place. So, you're talking about, Chris's question was, do you forgive those people that have empathy to those people? I can do all that, but I just won't hang out with them. What do you do in that situation? Because I see myself constantly shedding not shedding them from my life. They're still in my life. I love them. When we hang out, I'll be cordial. I love you. But I know that they're going to drag my vibe down because of their energy. So do you avoid those people? Are you so good at what you do, the triggers don't even affect you? Because I'm not there yet.
Absolutely. No, of course not. Can I have a bunch of that? So
thank you.
It is a very good question. And you hit one word you said, well, how their energy affects you.
Yeah.
So how their energy affects you is how you identify with that person to allow that to happen. Because you're 100% responsible for your energy. Yeah. So if you're feeling in a place where you are balanced and centered, okay, that's wonderful. So you can go anywhere and still be balanced and centered, but there's an identity that you have, or could be a cluster of identities that you have, that the relationship, when you're in a relationship with these people, that's when those identities they come up, right? Mm-hmm. And when they come up with resistance, well, that means that they're no longer working for you how you want them to work for you, or how they did in the past, because you're not in the same place you were. So then you have to have that conversation with yourself. Okay, what identities, if you really want to explore it, you can say, what identities am I holding on to that no longer work for me? Just let it come to you. Don't think it. None of this yet. Don't think any of this stuff. You just put the question out there and see what bounces back to you. And then you go to a place of allowance. And if you choose to, and you allow them to go, They're going to fade away. Now, what happens is your relationship may fall apart, but your relationship may be transmuted into something very different. So the next time you interact with these people, you're not going to see them the same way as you saw them in the previous thing, because that identity is no longer in your toolbox, we'll say. Like, you no longer hold on to that. So that will be replaced with something else. So to answer your question, how does it affect me? Well, yeah, people fade away, but my relationships also change with people. And that's only, like what Gissele keeps talking about, it's only because the relationship with myself is changing, right? Because 9 times out of 10, when I'm triggered by somebody, it's an identity that I no longer want, but I'm dragging around with me like a suitcase, and I want to open it up and just, let it go.
Yeah.
So I love that answer. And just real quick before, I just want to say one thing. As that's happening, are you guys noticing that right now, because so many of us are up leveling so fast, that if you're with people with the similar frequencies, every time I do what you're saying, where I'm like, what is it in me that I can shift? Then I come back and I'm like, shit, there's 2 new things to shift, because they up leveled. Are you seeing, like, it's constant? Like,
but try not to think about it so much. Like, you can get caught in your mind, like, because the mind is a wonderful trap in a way, right? It was a beautiful thing. It served its purpose. But where you're talking about, the things that you're talking about are beyond the mind, right? Like, where you're going is beyond the mind, and we can't even put words to what that truly means, because we want to do it from within the mind. So as soon as you do it within the mind, well, I come up with a wonderful definition, which will be constructed in the rational mind and grounded in the rational mind. It'll have nothing to do with outside and beyond the rational mind. So my advice to you is then, go easy on yourself, right? Like, if you need to have time by yourself, have time by yourself. My teens or my adult years, I would hate, and I don't say hate ever, hate to go into a crowd, because the energies that I was feeling from the crowd would be so overwhelming. I would just be like, I hate it. I got to get out of here. So like, as we change and as we grow, you get more sensitive, right? So you start to pick up things, and then you have to honor yourself first. If you need a day off from your friends, okay, take a day off from your friends. But, and be easy on yourself too, right? We're all going to stumble and fall.
So one of the things I learned in my own journey, and I don't know if you find this resonates with you, is that the more I stand in my own authority energetically, the less people affect me in their mood. And so I have this cute little story that I was at Starbucks one day, and I was standing in line, and a person came in, and their energy was off. There was something not like, seriously. And so I was standing in line, and I thought but there was people blocking the door. And I said to myself, okay, stay or go. Cause I said to myself, something's off about this person. This is not feeling good. And so I said to myself, you know what? I'm not going to go because there's people blocking the door. I'm just going to be love. I'm just going to extend love. And it was just me playing. And so I just started feeling the energy of love, and I started extending that person love. And that's where I held it. And the person came up, looked right at me and said, I can't be here, and left the Starbucks. And half the people didn't notice. Other people were like, what happened? And then I was like, so then after I left, I texted my friend. I was like, oh my God, like this happened. And so what I've noticed is when I'm willing to reimagine people and see them in the higher light, they will either align or they will leave. And most often I find people align. I do find that it's my own image of that I think people who they're being. And so because the mind doesn't like to be wrong, we seek confirmation of who we think people are being and ignore anything that doesn't validate what we believe. But if I'm willing to reimagine people and see them in their highest light, usually they will align to that. At least that has been my experience.
Right. But I would say, just to contradict you, from the other perspective, the same scenario, you are identify, right? And so the reflection's coming back to you, and it's irritating you. But 9 times out of 10, the energy that the person is not what we perceive them to be, because we perceive a person and we put all our crap on them as they're this way, they're this way, they're this way. So I would challenge that you had that interaction at that moment when you just became love. that identity released,
yeah.
and that person now from their own volition, it was too much for them, and so they had to go. And the other times we usually have a lot of success because we have, we see people differently.
Yeah.
But we're not seeing. We're allowing ourselves to see differently.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's for me. It's all about us. Like that's the thing that we it's very challenging because we live in the outside world, right? We live in. Like, think about it. We're having a conversation with you two guys who are thousands of kilometers away or miles away. But really, I'm having a conversation with myself in a perspective, right? Yeah. Right now, and so we all are. It's weird.
So
We're
true.
not going anywhere.
It's so true. I love this. I love this conversation. What you guys are talking about reminds me of how I was able to see people in a different light. The two different situations I'll share with you. Number one, with my mom, I had so much anger and resentment towards her in the way she treated me. We were homeless for 4 years out on the street. She picked her cats and her dogs before me. It's all this craziness. And it wasn't until like throughout her adult life, she would sit there and say, I'm 4 years old. I'm 3 years old. I'm like, Mom, you're a fucking grown ass adult. Why don't you start acting like it? What's this fucking 4 years old bullshit? You're fucking, what the hell? And she clung on to her stuffed animals and everything else. And I was just so mad at her. She was not fitting my expectation of what an adult was, what a mother should be, what a parent should be, and everything else. And then one day it dawned on me, and I'm like, what happened for her at 4 years old? I started doing this child psychology stuff and started realizing that between the ages of 0 and 5, that's really who we become based on all the different inputs and the beliefs that we have and what we're trying to do to seek that validation, right versus wrong, and all of the different stuff. And I'm like, what happened to her? I'm like, oh, her parents divorced when she was 4 years old. I'm like, oh. And then it dawned on me, I'm like, wait a minute. Let me think about this. If I went through all the experiences that she went through, all the different relationships, all the different inputs, all the different failures and mistakes and everything else that she went through, might I be like her? And my instinct wanted to say, no, fuck that. No, I'm smarter than that. No, I would never put my son through this. But when I got real with myself, I'm like, might I be? Yeah, there's a large probability that I might just be exactly like her. And so once I started thinking about it from a deeper level, it's like, she's here, like you said before, you said that they're here on their journey. And that's one thing that saved me in my personal relationship because I wanted to fix everybody. I know the answers of what I can do to help fix you, but you're here on your journey. I can't rob you of that particular experience. She was here on her journey trying to figure out herself. I was here because I called her into this experience to say, listen, for my own personal growth, I need somebody to challenge me in such a way, like you said, David, before. I'm the man I am today because of all the shit I went through. Everything that has happened up until now is preparing me for what's next. And so I think what we can leave the viewers and the listeners tonight is once you change your perspective about yourself and about the people around in your world and what type of role they provide and how you can sit there and say, what am I supposed to learn from this? How can I gain from this? Then it becomes a whole different ballgame. And so that's something that has tremendously helped me in these particular situations. And the other thing I'll share is that, to your point, like when I look at people now and I get pissed off at them, like I try to look at them from a space of who were you as a kid? And are you still that little boy or that little girl trapped in an adult body trying to figure it all out? You know, we got all these different inputs going through our life. We want to be older. We want to grow up. And all of a sudden we grow up and we're like, fuck, this isn't the thing I signed up for. So once I started putting myself in that perspective and say, how can I see this person from a little boy or a little girl? You know, somebody stomping their feet and like the Republicans are bad or the Democrats are bad, the COVID's fake and, you know, whatever it might be. Where are those people as little kids? Why are they so, what happened in their fucking life? So I could sit there and go have some empathy and compassion. And then like Stephen Covey says in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, how can I seek first to understand? Tell me about, I just ask them the question, like, tell me about your childhood. What kind of environment were you raised in? Sure enough, I'll find there's situations in their childhood that help them become the people they are today. And I'll give you guys an example. It's a fucked up example, but we're watching the Jeffrey Dahmer story on Netflix. Holy shit. Right. I have no desire to watch it and everything else. And we saw the opening thing and I was just like, fuck, this is crazy. But my first question was like, I wonder what his childhood was like. And so they started doing flashback sequences to his childhood. And I'm like, did he have love? Did he have proper care? If he had mental issues, was he taken to have help and everything else? And he wasn't. He was actually introduced to the dissecting. I mean, I won't go into the whole story, but allowed me to have some compassion for him in his journey. Do I agree with that? No. Absolutely not. But I think that if he had a different experience as a child, his outcome would have been totally different as well. So I think to all of our points tonight, I think the basis of the conversation is that we have to take responsibility for our actions, be open and willing to go down that road and to have that growth and to get uncomfortable with ourselves, because at the end of that opportunity, that growth, then we can go back and help other people go through that same transitional process and be there for them like we are being here in the conversation tonight. So we definitely want to have you guys back on the show. There's so many different places we can go off of. And the fact that you guys are just beautiful people here wanting to share. Talk to us a little bit before we wrap up. What is it that you do with your clients and how can people work with you?
Yeah, of course. I think as we mentioned earlier, so we offer coaching. We do workshops as well. And we also work within the workplace too, is there's a lot of kind of a lack of compassion in the workplace, is that we see that the workplace is shifting. There's a reimagining of what work really means. And do we have to do the grind, and can we treat each other humanely? And can we really work from the flow instead of the grind? And can we really just reimagine those places? And so, yeah, so if you come on our website, www.maitricentre.com, you will find all of our services there as well. We also do something called the Love and Compassion podcast. We have people like the beautiful Scott who come and share their experiences of how love and compassion has positively impacted their lives in the world. And we have conversations such as the one we've had today about, what if the people that are kind of our worst enemies, could they be our bestest friends, in that they're really asking us to step up into our own power and really stop giving our authority away to people.
Yeah.
One of the things I think that I would like to end the conversation with is just reminding people that they have the power to heal, that they have everything they need within themselves in order to get there. And, like for us, it's like, we assist people in their journey, but it is their journey. They have to be willing to show up for themselves, to be there for themselves, to give love for themselves. And so this is really just a beautiful journey that we're all kind of taking together in walking each other all the way home. Right. So,
yeah.
I've been hearing that a lot lately. Oh, well, you guys are beautiful people. We appreciate you for being here on the Unfiltered Experience. We'll definitely have you back. We're going to put you backstage here for a second, and Scott and I are going to end out the show, but don't go anywhere. Appreciate you and love you guys.
Thanks for having us.
You are most welcome, and we will definitely have more conversations with you guys. Mr. Scott Goyette, thank you for bringing these beautiful people onto the show. I mean, there's so much value in what they said, and I can resonate with so many different things. What did you get out of the conversation tonight? How did it speak to you?
So I love the whole idea of, early on talking about the definitions of love and that very agape mentality and that unconditional love yourself first. I mean, I preach it through Go Love Now. So I validate it. I think one of the important things is talking about willingness. I heard the word willingness. I was talking about awareness, then willingness. If each and every one of us who might be in a space that we can truly answer your question, I love myself, and I mean it, because I know when I love myself and fill my cup, I can be in service and share my gifts with others. That's what they're doing. That's what you're doing. That's what I'm doing. So hopefully everybody who's listening can take that step forward and love themselves just a little bit more and have the willingness to find their brilliance and share it with the world. That's all I got, Chris. That's all I can give you.
Well, I mean, it's beautiful. It's on point. I mean, that's when the answers are simple, that means they're more succinct. And I agree wholeheartedly with you. I mean, I think when I was listening to them talk, and I was thinking about my own personal journey, because I did not like people. I did not want to be around people. And throughout my entire journey, about not trusting people, like David was saying, and just Gissele, both were saying, for me, it's about that desire to sit there and say, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? And especially what am I making this to mean about me? And I think that's part and parcel of why I'm still here today and why I continue to grow. And the fact that we all will go through those hills, those peaks, and those valleys. And it's when we're in those valleys that it's important for us to sit there and say, okay, instead of reacting to what's happening around me, how can I sit there and take it in and respond and think about, like Dr. Wayne Dyer says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at begin to change. For me, in my journey, I sit there and I think about, I was talking to somebody earlier today about, how I was in my 20s and my 30s. I mean, I'm still the same person pretty much, but the growth that I've experienced, I would love to go back and talk to some of these people who I have not seen in 20 years. They would probably be blown away at how much I've changed because of that desire to sit there and say, you know what, I'm not going to remain a victim. And I think that's one of the topics that we said tonight here is you can choose to remain in that victim standpoint. Like, I've shared with you about my sister. I was just reminding my wife about this, that it would blew my mind that she did not see my mom for like over 25 years, yet she turned out exactly like her. And she chose to be that victim. She chose to be a victim of her childhood. And whereas I chose to sit there and say, because she asked me, she goes, how did you not turn out like mom? You were with her all those years. And I'm like, I chose not to be like mom because I made a choice and took active actions in my life to find out what successful people do. How do they act? How do they respond? How do they heal themselves? I personally have gone to counseling and to therapists and have coaches and mentors and masterminds and things of that nature. I've always been thirsty for that growth. I think that's important for everybody here tonight to recognize. Number one, like I love how David said it. Do I even like myself? And if I don't like myself, what are some aspects and what can I do to change? And one of the first things we can do is we can change is the people we hang out with. So many times we're looking for external validation from these people. We want their approval, or we're hanging out with them because there's the what's it? Not sunk cost bias, the like-mindedness, the groupthink. Yeah. Like, oh, everybody thinks like me. I'm going to move to Florida because everybody thinks like me.
Sure. I think it's confirmation bias.
Yeah, I think it's important tonight for everybody out there to sit there and take from this conversation to really think about who you are and where you're at in this journey, and how it is that you can continue to grow and not remain complacent and stale, and find more of that love in your life. Because I mean, even just since knowing you and Go Love Now and working with you in the coaching programs, love is the defining factor, because you said it so perfectly, and now I use it. You can look through life through one of two lenses: that lens of love or that lens of fear. And so when you look through that lens of fear and that lens is tarnished, how many different things in your life and your actions are going to be impacted by that fear, as opposed to sitting there and saying, like, I love how Gissele said it, like looking at it from pure love. And so I think that's what I got from the conversation tonight. And I hope all you guys out there in viewership land and podcast land got that as well.
I love it.
You love it.
See what I did there? I love it.
I love it. And so we love you guys. I'll just sit here and highlight all the beautiful people. We got Robert Broker in the house. Thank you, Robert, for being here. We got Mary Kay in the house. She says, yep, my grandfather abandoned my dad, aunt, and grandma. There's still residual effects on that, on my dad, my hero. We got Samuel Sneed. What's up, Samuel, in the house? He says, we get to break the generational chains. We become aware we are wrapped in them in too many ways. Absolutely. Robert is in here. He says, well, whoops, I didn't want to something about, he's talking about cats. Robert's very verbose. And we appreciate you guys being here. Jacqueline Rose in the house. I love this. I wanted to highlight this before. Samuel says, people can only give to the level that they give themselves. That's good. And so many are not taught how to give it all. This is where grace abounds. Absolutely. Absolutely. So we just want to invite you guys, if you're listening here on the podcast or here on the video cast, that to please go to www.theunfilteredexperience.com, theunfilteredexperience.com. Go there, join the Facebook community. Let me and Scott know what topics, what type of guests you would want here for the conversation, because this is really what it is. Just like tonight, it's just a conversation with our guests, at a bar or coffee shop, and just learning how we can grow together, how we can make this world a little bit better place. So go to www.theunfilteredexperience.com. Let us know. We've got a lot of exciting shows, a lot of exciting guests coming up designed to impact you guys. And so we can all together grow and be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. And with that, I believe that's it.
That is it. Totally unfiltered. We've experienced it. Jump into it. We love you guys.
Go have a beautiful week.